Kathy, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do have a quorum.
Awesome. You want to do roll call, please?
Chairman Parker?
Here.
Vice Chair Shuffler?
Here.
Commissioner Orr?
Here.
Commissioner Van Ousting?
Here.
Commissioner Van Zandt?
Here.
Commissioner Retberg?
Here.
Commissioner Yarge is excused, and the council liaison is absent. Quiet. We have a quorum.
Okay, very good. So we'll start off the meeting doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not sure, do we have a flag out there that we can stand to allegiance to? Okay, I pledge allegiance
To
the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
the republic for which it stands, a nation
with liberty and justice for all.
and justice for all.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll start off the meeting with the approval of minutes from August 27th, 2020. Has everybody had a chance to visit the minutes from last 2 months ago? Does anybody have any corrections to the meeting? Do we have any motions for approval?
I'll make an motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
So we've got Mike made the motion and the second was done by, is that you, William?
No, Shane.
Shane, okay. I don't have everybody's on my computer, I apologize. So we've got a motion and an approval. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those in opposed to the meeting say nay. Minutes are approved as written. Okay, so number 2 on the agenda, consideration of public comments. I'm not sure, do we have anybody from the public that has any comments to be made? Kathy?
No, we do not.
Okay. So we'll move on to item 3, which we have reports. Looks like we have a report for permanent base adjustment. What is it? Paul, you've got a Commissioner Chairman, you've got a request you were requested by staff to share with the commission the differences between the home rule and the permanent base adjustment. So you've got a small report on that, Paul? Or is that Tina?
Yeah, actually, Chairwoman Vice Chair asked me to provide a little bit of information on that.
Thank you. Okay, very good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So in August, the city had a ballot measure called the permanent base adjustment that was approved by the voters. And so shortly after it was approved, I happened to be in True Value and ran into Vice Chair Shuffler, and he was asking me some questions about it and had mentioned that he and another commissioner had a different understanding of what permanent base adjustment was and thought that it might be important for me to share a little bit of information on the permanent base adjustment, since you are not only citizens, but also a commission that recommends capital project budgets and spending on the water, sewer, and sanitation side. So I thought I'd just take a few minutes. I put a very short presentation together to share what the permanent base adjustment is and hopefully not confuse you and instead provide a little bit of clarity. So let me see if I can get my screen to share with you. Okay, do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Great.
Yes.
Awesome, thank you very much. Okay, so I want to start with giving a little bit of background. So the state of Arizona restricts the amount of money that a city can spend each year. And this was actually brought to the voters back in 1980. It was a citizen initiative and it was approved by the voters. voters. And what it basically said is that cities the spending limit for cities would be based on a city's 1980 budget. And then every year thereafter, cities would be allowed to increase that 1980 budget by an inflationary number and a city population adjustment. What it doesn't take into account, or didn't take into account, is that are the services that we as the city of Kingman provide to citizens outside of our city limits. So we provide water, we provide sewers, sanitation, people come into our community and use our parks. It also does not take into consideration any of the new services that we have provided since 1980. So the state recognized that there was an issue with that. And what they said, I believe it was in 1988, is that, okay, cities, you're right. We will allow you guys to take to your voters an alternative to that state spending limit, but your voters have to approve of it. And there are two different alternatives that you can take to your voters. And so the two options are home rule or permanent base adjustment. So home rule is that we can ask the voters to allow us to exclude certain expenses from that state spending limit calculation. We still have to meet that state spending limit, but we can ask the voters to approve some exclusions. The permanent base adjustment is not that. It says you have to meet the state spending limit and you can't exclude any expenses, but what you can do is you can adjust that 1980 number that the state is using in that calculation. Both of these have to go to the voters. Home rule goes to the voters every 4 years. Permanent base goes to the voters once. Once it's approved, it doesn't go back to the voters until a city says, we need to increase that number again. Also, both of these options do not increase taxes. So it gives no additional tax authority to the council either. Right now, if the city of Kingman wants to increase its sales tax rate, we're required to go to the voters to ask that. Doesn't change that. Both home rule and permanent base adjustment allow cities to spend what we're currently collecting. Again, we're not asking for additional revenues. We're just asking for the spending authority or for the authority to spend what we're already collecting. The differences with the two options is the frequency of voter approval and the calculation method. And that's really the only difference. So since 1992, the voters of Kingman have approved the home rule option. That is what has been taken to the voters since then. And it has allowed the city to exclude expenses that are outside of for the services that we provide outside of the city limits. So water, sewer, solid waste, or sanitation. And recently we asked the voters to add airport expenses to that exclusion. You'll see, though, that since about 2012, we've had a decline in voter approval rating for the home rule. And so this is a big concern. When we took this to the voters in 2018 and we had such a low approval rating, it concerned staff seriously. And when we shared the concern with the council, they too were very concerned. If we do not get approved for one of these alternatives, you'll see in one of the slides, we'll be required to cut our budget drastically. So it's very important that the city of Kingman gets one of these alternatives. And so when we took this to the council, we said, because of voter approval ratings, we're afraid that it may not get passed in the future. Permanent base adjustment allows us to take it one time to the voters, and then we can keep it in place and continue to provide those services to our citizens. So we felt that it was a better alternative. Additionally, as we add more services over the years, this permanent base adjustment will allow us to provide those services without having to ask for the voters to do so, or to allow us to spend the money to do so. So just to quickly give you an idea so you understand that there is no increase in taxes, it really is just in the calculation. I put a quick table together to break out the three different methods of calculating our spending limit. So there's that state spending limit, there's the home rule spending limit, and then there's that permanent base adjustment limit. And I thought I'd use the fiscal year 21 budget number. So we have a total appropriation in fiscal year 21 of $222 million. Now, the state constitution says everyone, all cities are allowed to take out certain expenses from the calculation. Things like debt, things like grant projects, the participation from outside entities that are help paying for projects, we can take those out. Home rule says we can also take out water, sewer, sanitation, so we're allowed to take those out under home rule. So then at the end of the day, the amount that is subject to the state spending limitation varies depending on which option we would fall under. The state limitation for the city of Kingman in 2021 is just over $50 million. However, if we would have used permanent base adjustment and changed that 1980 number, it would actually be $106 million. So the difference you'll see, depending on the option that we have to fall under, is very big if we do not have an alternative. That state spending limit number, we would have to cut almost $50 million from our budget, and that will impact every single service that we provide, public safety, all of our water and sewer, capital projects, which is why we need the alternative. Home rule, you'll see there was a little bit of a cushion in 21, but with permanent base adjustment, we as staff went out many, many years and tried to determine what we needed in order to provide services in the out years so that we wouldn't have to go back to the voters in 1, 2, 3 years. And we came up with a $5 million increase to that 1980 budget number, which you'll see below where the arrow is. So that's really the difference between the two. Again, it's just a way to calculate our spending limit. It doesn't give any additional authority to the council to increase taxes, and it doesn't increase taxes. And so in conclusion, we know that the voters approved of this in August. It won't go back to the voters until we feel that it needs to be adjusted, and it goes into effect with our fiscal year 22 budget. And I hope I was able to provide, I guess, like I said, clarification instead of confusion for you. There we go.
So do we have any questions, guys? Any questions for Tina? Nicely done, Tina. Now,
thank you so much, Chairwoman.
Now, home rule was passed, so we don't have to take that in front of the public anymore, or is it like every 4 years, did you say?
So home rule was passed in 2018, but now that the voters approved a permanent base adjustment, that'll go into effect with our next fiscal year, and we will not be taking it to the voters any longer unless sometime down the road we need to change that 1980 number. Oh,
I see. Okay, very good. Very good. Nice. Questions? Good job. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so we'll go on to the next order of business. We've got new business, item 4. We've got the review and recommendation of request for water service to High Desert Estates, track 3071, engineering 20-0054. Big Red Construction has submitted its request for water service for a new subdivision known as High Desert Estates, track 3071. The property is identified as parcel 324-16-067 and is just over 25 acres in size. It's located east of Marshall Drive and south of Jaggerson Avenue.
Good evening, everyone. This is Greg Henry, engineer. What I'd like to do is see if I can share my screen here on this. And is that, we should be looking at the communication to the commission here now. Is that what everyone sees on the screen? Yeah, okay. So as Chairperson Parker has mentioned, this is a request for a new subdivision known as High Desert Estates, Tract 3071. It is located in the North Kingman area in the county, under county jurisdiction, but it's still within the city water and sewer boundary system. So the regulations, the utility regulations require that all new subdivisions have City Council approval after review by the Municipal Utility Commission. This is a residential subdivision. The proposal is to subdivide into 107 new residential single-family homes, more or less about the 6,000 square foot lot size. And again, the developer is Big Red Construction. They have submitted their water and sewer plans for review and approval, and they've been reviewed, not approved yet, but staff has reviewed them. Our typical condition for this type of routine request would be that they just extend the water and sewer in accordance with our utility regulations. Their preliminary plans have shown that they intend to do that. So I'll just forward, maybe slide down here so we can see the aerial maps here. This just shows the general location. Jiggerson Avenue is here on the north side of this, and Marshall Drive is located here. Here's more or less a zoomed in look at the property. It's all vacant land at this point. And this is their proposed subdivision layout. So again, our staff would recommend approval. Standard condition would be just that they recommend that they extend the water and sewer in accordance with the current utility regulations. And I would be happy to answer any questions from the commission at this point.
Oh, this is Toby. I have a question here.
Okay. I think it's muted, Toby.
Okay. How will the proposed impact fees affect this? It is outside the city limits, so would the impact fees apply to this or not?
Tina, are you still on? Do you want me to, typically the impact, there's water and sewer. If there's an impact to the water and sewer system, the city would collect impact fees for those, but there would be no other impact fees that are collected.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question. Greg, how are water pressures figured? Are water pressures good? I mean, this is the huge subdivision that's going to be going in. Are water pressures going to be affected within the New Kingman Edition area or to the homes that are already served by City of Kingman through this area?
No, in fact, one of the development requirements is they submit. This is an area that's, you know, where it's located, it's near the Mojave Channel, so it's a lower area of town. So what that means is the pressures are actually really good out here. So we don't anticipate any pressures that would impact the system out here. And they have submitted a report confirming that design. They have what we call a engineer's design report for the water system. So they analyze the water demand, and they include some fire flow, and they basically have to demonstrate to us that they're not impacting the system for other customers. And
Nice.
we're satisfied with that. So
Nice. Any other questions out there? I would entertain a motion at this point in time.
I'll second it.
Do we have a motion first?
Oh, sorry. I make a motion to approve it, subject to engineering's approvals as stated.
Awesome. So we've got a motion. We've got a second.
I'll second it.
Paul has seconded. So we've got a motion and a second. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Ayes carry. Okay, we'll move on to the next order of business. We've got a request for variance of an overhead power to 3690 North Moore Street, engineering 20-0056. Staff received a request to waive the Kingman Municipal Code regarding the installation of underground utilities for a new single wide house at 3690 Moore Street. Brandon Moltello of Mojave Mesa Builders has requested the approval to install the overhead electric service to the subject property. Is Brandon on the line? No. Kathy, is Brandon on the line? I guess not.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Greg, do you want to take this one too? Is there any history behind this one?
Yeah, I'll be happy to take it and explain. I don't have much history. We received this request. I've tried to reach out to Brandon to obtain his understanding of the reason behind the request. I've left messages and he's not called back, and so I'll just explain, what I know. And basically, there's a new home that's under construction at 3690 North Moore Street. I have some photos that I'll scroll down to so the commission can see. And just to give you the background, the city council years ago passed an ordinance that said all new service drops, secondary, power drops for homes had to go in underground conduits. And so there's an ordinance on the book that requires this. The commission has reviewed some of these in the past, and some have been approved, and some of the waivers have been denied. This one, I didn't really find a good reason as to the request. There's I'll scroll down to the aerial here. This is the location here. There's a new house constructed on parcel 320-06-951, and it's going to front on Moore Street. But the power access is going to be, there's a dirt alley here on the east side of the lot. And there's an existing power pole just maybe 25 feet away from where the lot is. And so typically it would just be a matter of bringing the electric service down the outside of the pole and a protective conduit and then underground to the house. This isn't a particularly rocky area, so I don't foresee an exorbitant expensive cost to underground it. There's not water and sewer lines that are in this easement. They're all out in the streets here. So I'm gonna keep scrolling down here. This kind of shows the alley easement looking north of Pert Avenue. You can see the home here on the left-hand side of the photo. The house is essentially framed. This was probably taken a week or so ago. So there might be some additional progress since then, but this is the pole here. They essentially just have to bring a conduit down the outside of the pole and then underground there. And I've got another photo here that kind of shows looking the other direction. But they were going to bring their electric service in somewhere on this side of the house. So again, this is a dirt alley. There's very little traffic. So there's no pavement that would have to be disturbed. So I didn't fully, understand the full reason for the request, but, here's the ordinance that calls for the undergrounding of utilities, and it does list, some exceptions. There's some exemptions they talk about in D here. I didn't really see that any of this applied. Installation of overhead secondary lines across pre-existing paved streets, that doesn't apply. Normal maintenance or repair of existing utility systems. I didn't see how any of the exemptions would have applied to this. So, absent a good reason, we're recommending that the power be the request for a waiver be denied and that the power go underground here. And with that, I will be happy to try and answer any questions from the commission.
I have a question. So it looks like the pole is sitting behind 950, parcel number 950.
That's correct.
So if they were to swing the power lines over to hit the house, if it was, if the service to that house is there, would it swing over that fence line that would affect that neighboring parcel? And it would be this parcel with the chain link fence that sits behind that new home.
It looks like it would to me, and typically Unisource is very cognizant of that sort of aerial encroachment, if you will. They're very cognizant of that, and they would likely request some sort of an easement from the property owner with the chain link fence in order to do this. That is a good point. So yeah, so this other line that comes through the picture here, I believe is more of a cable, communications cable. The electric's up a little higher, and you can see these other drops here. There are most of the homes in this neighborhood are older, so they do have overhead electric, and possibly that was one reason that the applicant was requesting to go overhead. I did drive out there and confirm that most of the homes on this block do have overhead. And I failed to mention that. I did intend to mention that. But yeah, in general, they would likely have to either get an easement or set a smaller pole in order to bring the aerial drop to the new home.
Makes sense. Thank you, Greg.
Can I make a comment?
Please do.
I'm sure the reason that he wants to do this is to save some money, because I know an overhead service is less expensive than underground. I can't tell you how much he's going to save. And believe me, I'm a big proponent of underground services. The overhead stuff is not only unsightly, but then you have the problem if somebody's going to run into it at some time during this lifespan. Somebody will hit the wire with a load or something. But anyway, I drove down the alley, and every single house in both directions, every one, with the exception of one, does have an overhead service. And the one that does not have an overhead service is at the far north end. Another house that was built recently. So I'm actually going to argue in favor of cutting the guy some slack and letting him do an overhead, only because the precedent has been set for the neighborhood. And if he did go underground, he'd be only one of two on that entire block that has an underground service.
Okay, do you want to make a motion? Does any other
One quick question. One quick question. Is there a liability to the city, or sorry, two questions. If they leave the line above ground, and secondly, if another home, say for there, was to burn down, when they went to rebuild, would they have to sink the line underground, or would they be allowed to reestablish the line from the pole above ground?
Well, I'm not sure I can answer the liability question. But for allowing it to go overhead, if somebody were to come, you know, and as Commissioner Orr mentioned, hit the overhead line in the future, I guess I would say that likely there would be some liability there, because it seems there's always some liability towards the city. I believe in the case of a home that is burnt down, I'm not sure if that's spelled out in here, but I believe they're allowed to go back overhead if their existing was overhead. I'm going to read through this just to see if in fact that is the case, but I don't see that it's addressed here.
Yeah, I didn't see it addressed either. That's what I was curious.
Yeah. I know it's addressed in other areas of the code, but apparently not in the underground utility requirements.
If I can weigh in, having a little bit of experience in running into overhead lines, the liability really falls on the person that runs into it, and it is more of a power company issue. That's not to say that the city would be completely out of the picture the way things are. You know, people will sue everybody in sight, but the problem becomes a utility company problem, and plus whoever does the damage is running into the line. So, unless there's any further discussion, I will go ahead and make a motion to let the guy have the whatever we call it a variance deviation from the city ordinance.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, Shane, you've got a second. All those in favor of that motion, giving Mojave Mesa Builders the ability to go overhead to this new build, answer with aye.
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 Those opposed, please say nay. The ayes carry it. Okay, so we'll go on to the next one, which looks like it's just the same thing, but over on 2119 Gates Avenue, request for variance of overhead power. It looks like Brandon Metello of Mojave Mesa Builders has also requested the approval to install overhead electric service to this subject property, which I'm guessing, Greg, are they in motion of building like they are there on Pert?
Yes, ma'am. They certainly are. They're not as far along, but they do have a house pad. And I haven't been by there within the last week, but I took some photos about a week ago. There's a house pad that's poured. It's essentially very similar to the previous request. There is an electric pole and box. It's a little further away than the last one, but I just kind of measured about 55 feet on our GIS system. And here's a picture looking east in the alley, and the new home is, here's a city trash container here. The new home construction is just the other side of this city trash container. There's already an underground electric box here that has been brought underground, so it'd be a matter of just, I guess, running a conduit from there to the new home construction. Here's a view from the alley looking north, so you can see the house foundation's been poured. there's also, this is looking back at Gates Avenue. So there is power in Gates Avenue as well. I just showed the alley photos because, you know, if they were gonna be required to go underground, it would likely be cheaper and easier to come in the dirt alley than it would to be crossing paved road, which is actually one of the exemptions listed in section 9-5 anyway. So, you know, I drove the neighborhood. There are there's a little bigger mix of underground in this area, and I believe it's just attributed to there's likely just been the newer homes that have been built have been required to go underground. And on both sides of Gates Avenue in this block, there's a few houses on the south side of Gates and a few on the north that have gone underground. So it's not quite as was mentioned in the last discussion that most or almost all of, with the exception of one on the previous request on their block were overhead. So it's a little different here, and it just depends on when the house was built. And with that, I'll happily try to answer any questions.
I'll go ahead and make a comment here. I did not look at this one, but it does appear that this neighborhood is mainly underground services, and I think it would be, I don't know, it would make sense if most of them are already underground to require him to go underground on this one, as opposed to the other neighborhood where everybody was an older neighborhood and everybody was overhead. This, as you said, is a mix, but it appears that, just looking at it to me, that there's probably more underground services, more new homes than there were overhead services.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make one, and I agree with Toby. If something is general in the area, then staying with it kind of makes sense. But in this particular case, where most of them are underground, it really appears that they should stay that way.
Yeah, I would agree. I would hate to make a precedence that we set with the first one, and I didn't look at either one of these, but just from the pictures, it looks like the pictures of the Gates area is far more orderly, to where lines that would cross to serve that house might look in disarray, as opposed to the other on Moore and Pert. It looked like there was almost a lot going on there, so it wasn't gonna take from what was already there.
Madam Chairwoman.
Yes.
This is Ken Watkins. Can I get you all to look at that one picture? I think it's the first picture that shows it right there. Now, if you expand that out, even the house next door has power coming in. And you can see all the power lines that are coming in overhead. So I know it's a mix through the neighborhood, but I did want to just point that out to be fair to everybody. See, I know, Toby, Paul, doesn't that look like a picture? And that doesn't the house next door have power coming in overhead when you expand that out? And you can see a lot of overhead lines going over the alley. I mean, ideally, I'd love to have it where everything's underground, but in the sense of fairness, what do you do?
So you're talking about the brown house, Ken?
Yes,
With the brown
can. Right, because I think Greg mentioned that garbage can is right there at the corner, or splitting those two lots, and that lot just past that garbage can is the empty lot where they're building the property. So the house just next to it, going down the alley farther on the right, doesn't that have overhead power coming in?
Yes, it does, in fact.
I mean, like I said, I'm just pointing that out in fairness. Once again, I'd like to see everything underground, but we're not in that. This is infill in a neighborhood. So I just want to make sure everybody saw that picture. I'm not, obviously, I'm just a liaison. I'm just here to point that out. I don't have any voting power.
So Greg, was the ordinance made for new subdivisions? Was that the primary reason for it, or was it targeted throughout the city? Do you know the purpose for the ordinance?
Yeah, it was both. It was made both for new subdivisions and new construction in existing subdivisions. And it was just, as I recall, I was at the council meeting when that ordinance was adopted, and it was just the general feeling and consensus of the council at that time that underground utilities have a better, obviously, aesthetic, but just I believe there was even discussion of perhaps additional home value. And I'm not stating that as a fact, just going through memory on when the ordinance was adopted. But it was definitely intended for everything inside the city, new or existing subdivision.
Wayne, I'll go ahead and weigh in here again. I think lest we become too generous in allowing exemptions, I think we should not allow this exemption. The reason being to stay consistent with the majority of the houses in the neighborhood. And I do think the majority of the houses in the neighborhood look like they have underground services. So that being said, I would make a motion to deny the request on this house.
So we have a motion to deny.
Real quick before we make a motion, can I speak?
Please.
This is Will Van Oosting. Has anyone ever talked to Unisource Electric about any of this to see how they feel about existing neighborhoods as far as filling in with overhead or underground? Because like we had mentioned on the last one, ultimately this becomes a utility issue. If they put in an overhead power line because we granted the exemption, now they're responsible for maintaining that overhead power line for outages and hit lines and stuff like that. Have we taken any of that into consideration?
I can tell you from my standpoint, Commissioner, I have not reached out to Unisource Electric on this particular one. At times we have, we just have not on this particular one.
Okay,
I've got a quick question. Since Ken brought up that brown house with a brown roof, Greg, do you have any information on that house when that house was built? It does look like there is overhead power, and I've been on the commission for a while and I've never seen this type of issue brought in front of us. So I question why we have these right now, if indeed that one is new and it does have overhead power to it.
I'll be happy to look up if you would give me just a moment. I can look up here from the county database when exactly that the house next door
Was built.
Yep, I can do that.
Let's do that. That might help me make a decision.
Okay. Should be up here in just a second. So that's 2123 Gates. It looks like 1999. It must have been built in 1999.
And the ordinance was put together.
Let me scroll down here. I can see when this was passed.
1987?
I think it's at the bottom here. So 1997.
97. So a few years before that house was actually built.
Yeah. I'm not sure offhand if they had requested an exemption and obtained one back then. I guess that's something I need to research on my end here. But yeah, it looks like this was passed on the ordinance 1136 on September 15th, 1997.
Does that change anybody's mind? With regards to, do we need more information as far as maybe rolling this over till next month before we make a decision?
Excuse me, Elaine, my motion was to deny the request.
Okay, so you wanna, we'll go through with the motion. So we've got a motion by Toby to deny the request of, for the variance for overhead power. Do we have a second on that? Do we have a second on that motion? Can you guys hear me? I cannot see anybody. I'm sorry.
I can hear you.
Apparently the motion dies for lack of a second.
We've got a motion. We do need a second, guys. You want to continue discussions?
So just to weigh in, Madam Chairperson, I guess when there's no second on the motion, as Commissioner Orr mentioned, it does die, but it doesn't mean someone else can make a new motion at this point.
Okay. So, so it's just dead in the water? Are we gonna look for more information?
I'd like to make a motion to gather some more information before we make a decision.
So we've got a second motion to make, to gather up more information before a decision is made by the commission. We have a second on that motion.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, who is that?
It's Mike.
Mike, okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes carry it, so we'll look to see this one again next month.
Can I ask if there's some specific information? What I would envision is maybe a map that shows an X for overhead and an O for underground, or maybe I'll use a U, an O for overhead and a U for underground on the lots. Is there anything additional that the commission would like to see as far as the additional information that's requested?
I think I would like.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
If you had the dates, like if the ones nearby that might be overhead when they were built or when it was done. So if it was done decades ago versus one that was done in more recent times.
Okay, we can certainly do that. That's no problem.
That's the same information I was looking for, just so that way we stay consistent since this ordinance was passed in 97.
Yeah, I would say that would be holistic, just so that we stay consistent. So that's a good idea. Perfect. Okay, so we'll go on to, are we done with that? Go on to the next order of business, which is announcements by commission members. I have an announcement that my husband and I are looking at making some changes here, and we might be moving out of the area. So I am going to resign my position as the chairperson and a commissioner within the Municipal Utilities Commission. Just so you guys know, so you guys can fight over the chairperson. Any other comments, announcements by any commission members? Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make
Make
the
a-
motion to adjourn.
We got a second?
Second.
Awesome. Got a motion and a second. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.